After a really slow start in September, some really lousy picks, especially in these videos. Week 6, I went 6-0, and I went 17-1 overall in my straight bets. So I was plus 16 units. I made up for all the terrible losses I had in the beginning of the month, and we're right back on track where I'd hoped to be. You told me, don't change your unit size, stay on track, and you're going to get back. And you know, Jake, you were right.
Like just how we use regression when we're looking at teams on the field, it's the same thing when it comes to our gambling. We knew that you were due to turn it around. You stayed the course, and last week you were him, undefeated in all your picks. I went 4-2. It was a very strong video overall, 10-2 for us combined. We're both over 500. BroThrow picks on lock. We're coming at you again week 7 now.
The beauty is that when you bet on BroThrow, you're betting with no vig. So if you lose 3 of them, you only have to lose or win 3 to get back to even. So you can sign up for BroThrow for free from any state in the US. I said it, any state in the US. I know people from Illinois and California, Florida, all these random states have some issues gambling, but if you use BroThrow, you won't have that issue. Click the link in the description below, or maybe it's in the comment section. It's brothrow.com/YouTube to try it today. You can sign up for free. Jake and I only use this now for our straight picks, and obviously we're making more money because we're not paying the vig. We're going to start this one off today with the Underdogs video. So underdog picks only, Jake. We're going to let you kick it off with Kansas State. What are you thinking here?
We're going right back to a regression play right here. Kansas State played Oklahoma State last week and looked horrific. Will Howard threw 3 interceptions. It was probably his worst game as a starter in Kansas State purple uniform. But I'm a believer in their team. I'm a believer in Chris Kleiman and their program and what he's building there. And he's the type of coach who doesn't take losses lightly. He's the type of coach who takes them out next day in practice. You're going full pads, maybe even the Oklahoma drill. Who knows? That's what I would like to think that he would do if it was still allowed. But I think that they're going to get super hyped up for this game. And Texas Tech has been pretty disappointing so far in the season. They've lost to teams like Wyoming, Oregon, which is, an understandable loss, and West Virginia, who is not the strongest team. So I think that they've definitely shown vulnerability. And I think Kansas State is just due for a great performance. They've been too hot, too good for too long, and they're too talented. That this 1.5 point spread, A, implies that they're the better team when you count in the 3-point home field advantage. And B, just means they pretty much have to win this game, which I like them to do. I'm taking the Wildcats.
I'm going to be honest with you. My love for Kansas State is faded this year because we liked them a lot last year. We won a lot on them. I took them against Missouri, and they lost that one, and I haven't been able to bet on them since. It's just left a bad taste in my mouth. I actually took Oklahoma State last week. They covered with ease. And then Texas Tech, a team who started slow, I took them again, and they beat Baylor down. It looks like they're starting to finally figure things out on offense. It took them a minute to get there. So I'm in a tough spot here. I like the pick. I don't like the team. I trust Texas Tech more at home, especially at night. So I lean Texas Tech. I'm probably going to stay off because I trust your judgment here. But man, not taking Texas Tech at home at night is really hard for me to do. So I'll have to sit and think on it. But I understand why you want to take K-State in this spot. Arkansas is at Bama. Bama is giving 19.5 points. When I first saw this spread pop up, I said, Alabama is a home run. You have to take them because Vegas knows something we don't. This is an SEC matchup, and you would think it'd be a little bit closer than 20 points, but Vegas is saying, no, it'll be a blowout. But then they contradict themselves because I go and look at the total. It's at 46.5, which means they're expecting a low-scoring game. They're expecting Bama to run some clock, run the ball, and if they do that, how are they going to win by 21? I loved Arkansas last week. 1, because they always play Ole Miss tough. 2, because Ole Miss was coming off of an emotional win over LSU. And now Bama's in a similar spot. They just came off a tough road game. A&M had a chance until the very end. And now they've got a game against a really disappointing Arkansas, who should be, I'm pretty sure everyone says, is going to be a free win. But just because it's a free win, I think it's plus 1040 or minus 1040 odds, it's not a free cover. I like this one better at 20, but 20, 19.5 doesn't really matter. You're either saying they're going to win by 17 or they're going to win by 21. So that 19.5 spot is just fine with me. My fear is that Bama, who has a pretty good defense, has that run D that can shut down in Arkansas with Raheem Sanders and with KJ Jefferson. Last week they held A&M to 2 yards a carry and 67 total rush yards. But my thought here is Arkansas is pissed off by those close losses to LSU and Ole Miss. Their defense has been putting up strong fights. And if they can force Bama to run the ball more often and keep it low scoring, then that clock's just going to run out and Bama's going to get away with this, 14 or 17-point winners.
Yeah, this 19.5 20-point spread is very interesting. Arkansas, even though they've lost 4 consecutive games, have not lost any game by more than 12 points. They managed to keep games pretty close. It seems like they play to their level of competition. Alabama, on the other hand, only has 2 games all season where they would have covered more than a 20-point spread, and that was against Middle Tennessee State and Mississippi State. I think that Arkansas, as you said, they're a good enough running team that the clock's going to run. Alabama certainly is going to run the ball because Jalen Milroe has not shown a lot of passing ability, way more running ability. So I think this game is going to be a lot of possessions draining the clock, and taking as many points as you can get in those games, I think is usually a good idea. So I definitely agree with your Arkansas lean.
How about Indiana at Michigan, the number one team in the country, in my opinion, given 33 points?
Well, I don't know if Indiana's the number one team yet. I think we still have some ways to go. But Indiana has one of the better defenses in the entire Big Ten. They only gave up 23 points to Ohio State. They only gave up 21 points to Louisville. Granted, they gave up over 40 points last week to Maryland, but that was before the bye week. I think this team is rested. They're ready to go. This is their Super Bowl. This is the biggest game on the schedule. They're going to have their number one plays, their trick plays, whatever they can bust out in this game, they're going to do. 33 is just way too many points in this scenario for how good Indiana's defense has been on the season. Michigan has not yet to score above 35 points except for the last 2 weeks, both of which they need a defensive touchdown. What did they get a defensive touchdown against Nebraska?
They did not.
Okay. Let me go there. So. Additionally, while Michigan's offense has been super hot the last 2 weeks, they still needed 2 pick sixes last week to get above 50 points. So this is a team that pretty much is due for about 35 to 38 points a game, no matter who they go against. But I don't think that's going to be enough to cover 33 in this situation. So give me Indiana plus the points. Again, we got a low total here of 45.5, and getting 33 points. I'm going to do that all day.
Yeah, your logic makes perfect sense, but here's the deal. Michigan's the best team in the country. The backups are still a top 25 team, and their third string would still beat Indiana. I know 33 is a big number, but if Michigan wants to, they can hold IU to 3 or 7. And I know if they want to, they could score 45 at will. So I'm going to stay away from this. I'm only staying away because you talked me into considering Indiana. But otherwise, I'd have to be on Michigan in this spot. Next is Florida at South Carolina. South Carolina having to give 2.5 points. We've got Graham Mertz, who is questionable, going up against Spencer Rattler, who had a pretty good end to last season. He's had an okay deal going this year, but I think this is like a 2-3 South Carolina team. They're not that good. Florida was living on a high after their win over Tennessee, but then Kentucky brought them back down to reality with a 19-point win. Then last week, they played Vanderbilt. It was a good recovery day. It got them some confidence. They won that game by like 21, I think. But now they're predicted to lose to this South Carolina team who only has one Power 5 win this year, and it was against Mississippi State. So Beamer was on bye last week after they had a loss. And now I think Vegas is saying, you've got a good chance because you've seen what Florida can do, and you're going to have extra time to prepare for them. But the reality is Florida's pissed off. And South Carolina might have gotten too comfortable taking off a week, So if Florida's pissed off and they come out and score 10 or 13 early on South Carolina and get some momentum, they could deflate that crowd pretty quickly. And if the crowd isn't in it, I don't think South Carolina has much of a chance. I think home field advantage is really what's going to keep them in this game. So I'm going to guess Florida gets a hot start. I'm going to guess they take the wind out of the sails. And because of that, I'm going to say Florida wins this one outright.
Home field advantage is definitely going to be huge for South Carolina. They've got a great fan base, super passionate. They're going to need their fans to be loud and impacting the game if they're going to win this one. I think this is a huge game for both teams. I'm actually willing to go as far as to say that whoever loses this game will not make a bowl game. It's a bold prediction right there. I know Florida's got 4 wins, but they still have Georgia, LSU, and Florida State on the schedule. I don't see them winning either of those 3. So then it comes down to Arkansas and Mizzou. Mizzou's look pretty feisty. Arkansas is beatable, but if they can win the South Carolina game, they're in a much better spot. And if they lose that, they got to win both Arkansas and Mizzou. Given that both their losses this year have been on the road and they got Graham Mertz, it's tough for me to pick them, but I'm going to lean with you and ride with you on this one just because I believe in your vision here.
Well, speaking of Graham Mertz, Iowa is at Wisconsin this weekend for a game that could decide the Big Ten West. So obviously you're going with Iowa here. What's the thinking?
Yeah, in last week's video, I said now that Cade McNamara's out, Iowa's back to playing that style of football that they know how to play. And that's exactly what happened against Purdue. They're starting quarterback now, Deacon Hill, 6 of 21 passing in that game. And yet they still managed to come out with that 20-14 victory due to their defense and field position battles. And I think it's going to be very similar against Wisconsin. Luke Fickell came in and he had an air raid scheme over in Cincinnati. And we thought it was going to be very similar to what he would do in Wisconsin. But Tanner Mordecai has not been as good as we thought he was going to be. The receiving core, not as strong, and they really have gone back to a more run scheme like we know from Wisconsin of old. Iowa's defense is super strong. Both teams are going to be running the ball, taking it out of the air. I mean, look at this total. It's 34.5. You're saying that there's not even going to be 5 touchdowns scored, and you're going to give me a touchdown and a field goal? This is the type of game that Iowa's going to keep close. I don't know if they're going to win it, but it's not going to be double digits. I'm taking Iowa on the points here.
Yeah, I'm actually going to sprinkle the money line as well at plus 310. The odds are great. I love this play. I'm going to ride it 100%. Like you said, Wisconsin's good at running the ball, but they don't pass it that well, which means they could be in for a couple turnovers. And if they are, then Iowa's going to win this one outright. So, yes, I love the pick, and I'm taking them to cover. Last, we've got Wake Forest at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, the 1.5-point favorite. I think we were both down on Wake this year after they lost Sam Hartman and so many other key pieces on offense. But then they came out and started 3-0. And then last week, they almost upset Clemson, and that was a road game. They lost by 5 points. If they would have gotten the onside kick, they probably would have won that outright. Now, I'm going to be honest. That was the first Wake game I've watched all season, and I haven't watched one Virginia Tech game. I'm just betting the spot here. Losing such a big game by such a close score like that is going to make a team hungry, and now Virginia Tech's on the receiving end. Neither of these two teams are that good, but I don't think home field advantage is that big of a deal since it's a day game. Virginia Tech's already had a lousy start. I'm just going to take the team who has been playing better, and that's Wake. And also, they have a better coaching staff, in my opinion. So, better team, better coaching staff, even though they're on the road.
Yeah, Wake has really surprised me with how well they've rebounded from losing Sam Hartman. I feel like generally when you lose a star quarterback like that, especially in the transfer portal, it's just tough to rebound the next year, but they've been pretty impressive. That game last week against Clemson, even though they lost by 5, is probably the most impressive performance from either of these two teams all year. So Wake Forest seems to be playing pretty well. I feel it's actually better for this game that they lost because if they won, they'd be partying super hard. They'd let it go to their head. But since they lost, you're going to be a little more grounded, know they've got work to do, and they're going to come to show out. So I like Wake Forest here as well.
I think the key word is they still have belief that they can do more. So I'm going to expect them to do more in this one. But Jake, thank you for the picks. We're going to get to our, favorites video next. And hopefully we can stay as hot this week as we were the last.
That's right. We're beating 10-2 this week. Stay tuned.
All right, I'll see you in the next one.